and I didn't see it. It became seriously infected, so I had to go into hospital for a few days, intravenous antibiotics to control the infection, and eventually they had to amputate the big toe. They couldn't save that. And I think within 6 months, I'd lost 70 pounds. I have lost up to my lowest weight. I was 98 pounds down. Then he went to calculate the dose. He said to me, well, let me see, you eat like 140 grams of carbs a day? And I said, no, I don't eat zero carbs. I don't eat any carbs. They don't offer you alternatives through nutrition, which obviously I found out now and know it's very effective. But I still didn't take a statin, and he did write me a letter with mentioning of, death and stuff. I sent him a letter back saying that it's ridiculous. There's no proof to that.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Well, welcome today, everyone. We have with us Pierre, who is from the UK or in Florida from the UK originally. He's going to share with us a bit of a success story. So, Pierre, let me just start out with, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah. My name's Pierre Curtis, but everyone calls me Peter.
Well, I'll call you Peter then. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Peter, that's fine. Yeah, it's a nickname. Yeah, I was born in 1948 in the UK. My father was in the RAF, so I was born close to Farnborough, but in Portsmouth, UK. That's where I was registered. So I'll be 77 in April, this coming April. So, yeah, I'm a retired electronics engineer. My last job was a field project engineer for public safety radio systems. I can mention the company, it's Motorola. I've been retired for like 13 years now. So, yeah, I lived in the UK until 1970. Then I moved to Rio de Janeiro. A company I worked for had a project there. And so I ended up spending 15 years in Brazil. And I met my wife. We married. We had 3 children. We have 3 children, and they were all born in Rio in Brazil. Yeah, cariocas as they call them there. So yeah, and I moved back to the UK for a short time in 1985 to 1982. So my sons had a little bit more experience in the UK system, so they pick up both sides of the family. Then I moved back to São Paulo, Brazil, working for Motorola in 1985, and I stayed there until 1992 when I moved back to the UK in 85-92, and then later I moved back to São Paulo, Brazil, where I stayed from 1992 until 1998. Then I moved to Fort Lauderdale, but still working for the company. And I moved back here, moved into the States in 1998. I got my US citizenship in 2006. I'm currently retired. I retired in 2013. And as I mentioned, I'm living near Fort Lauderdale. My wife Marlene is a Brazilian. We married in Rio in 72. So we've just, last couple of weeks ago, we made 53 years of marriage. So that's quite a session. So yeah, I have 3 sons. Yeah, I have 3 sons. The oldest 2 are 45. They're identical twins. My youngest, 41, also like you, was in the US Army. He started in the reserve and ended up in Airborne and did 3 active duty deployments in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. 5 grandkids so far. So that's more personal stuff. My health, basically, I guess my health, although I didn't know at the time, I had the metabolic issues. I had no idea what they were called at the time, but I started having psoriasis in my early 20s. It was really mainly on the scalp, and it got worse over the years. When I was living in Brazil, being in the sun and I was going to the beach life, it progressed slowly. I have a few spots on my legs, but then when I returned to the UK, no sun. No beach, and I'm guessing I'm eating a lot more processed food. It progressed to the chronic stage very quickly for me. Yeah, only in 2009. I mean, you try everything. It's everything on psoriasis. Nothing really helps. And some of the weird stuff you put on your skin is amazing. But anyway, in 2009, I was prescribed a biologic called Enbrel, and that did reverse it significantly. That was prescribed by my dermatologist. And at that time, my employer's insurance did cover it, although I had kind of a hefty copay, but it was worth it. When I retired and went on Medicare, I stopped it because the copay was really high in Medicare. And I did think about going back on it just before I went on. I went keto, and in 2018. But I did actually get a prescription, but I never used it, and so I ended up not going back on it because I found out the keto diet really helped stabilize my psoriasis. It's not gone completely away, but it is. I have occasional minor flare-ups, but it's basically stabilized as over the last 6 years. So that's a very positive thing, and I wasn't expecting that. I went on the keto diet to lose weight. So I also had a lot of intestinal issues, and over time, but they were minor, but they were annoying. And then I started getting, worse in my late 40s, and I had bouts of inflammation and infections due to being diagnosed eventually with diverticulitis. So both psoriasis and diverticulitis, I know they're autoimmune disorders, and from my personal experience, they are usually related to modern diet, high in highly processed carbs, sugars, ultra-processed foods, or combination of all, I suppose.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when I had a sigmoid colon resection in the USA just after I got here for the diverticulitis, because I was getting very serious infections. And post-op, after I came out, I had only been in the States shortly, so I hadn't really got into renewing prescriptions. But when I did do that, obviously I went to a clinic. I went to a clinic to do it. I hadn't at that time had a family physician or anything. So the clinic, the doctors there usually have a lot of experience. And the guy, I went in there and he said, no, I can't just give you the prescription of what you were taking. Let me do a series of blood tests, and then I can give you them. So he did that, and that's when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and that was in 1999 here in the US. But I guess I had it long before that. After the operation, I did develop an incisional hernia, probably from physical exertions a bit too early. I was going to get it fixed, but I never did because I was putting on weight. I started putting on weight by then, and I thought, well, let me lose weight, and then I'll go back for I never did because I ended up putting on a lot of weight. I did recently go back to went to the Cleveland Clinic about the hernia because I recently have had some intestinal issues, and I thought I had an intestinal blockage. So I just thought, let me check this out. But the doctor said, yeah, if you're okay now and you're using a binding, that's the best way to go at your age, and being type 2, it's very risky to do any surgery. So I've been with the same endocrinologist here in Florida for like 26 years. But 19 years of that, I just followed what he was telling me until I discovered low carb keto. And yeah, my type 2 was very progressive. I ended up on insulin, and I was on insulin for like 14 years, and it was insulin based, but no real advice on massive cutback on eating carbs. So that insulin therapy, and I was up to a massive amount of insulin, 240 units per day. It drove my weight up to like 280 pounds, and I'm 5'7". that's like it. I think, what's the BMI? The BMI is like 44. These days I'm down to like 28, 30. It could be lower, but that's what it is. But yeah, being morbidly obese at that weight, I had to use an extender belt when I was flying. Couldn't put socks on. Couldn't do up my shoelaces, so I opted for Velcro shoes. It was a real hassle. Not nowadays, are much better. But anyway, in 2017, I had a wound under my right big toe, and I didn't see it. And it became seriously infected, so I had to go into hospital for a few days. intravenous antibiotics to control the infection, and eventually they had to amputate the big toe. They couldn't save that. So that kind of woke me up a lot. And I kind of wanted to do something, but I had just no idea what to do. I knew I was kind of addicted to carbs, but I think I need to eat to live. How do I get around this, you know? And I just didn't have a solution. And someone sent me a video of Dr. Jason Fung. He's a Canadian kidney expert, and he explained fasting and low carb. And I didn't immediately watch the video. And eventually one night I couldn't sleep and I watched it, and it just kind of opened my eyes up. I thought, well, this is going to work. I'm sure it's going to work. So I started it, and this was in November 2018. And I think within 6 months I'd lost 70 pounds. And I have lost up to my lowest weight. I was 98 pounds down. That was recently. It was helped that I had some food poisoning, so I lost a lot of water. But yeah, I've been down to like 184, like 96 pounds down. But anyway, and so yeah, I started off keto. It was supposed to be and intermittent fasting, 16-8, and I was very successful at that for quite a long time. And then I started gaining a little bit more weight. I did get off insulin for a short time, but I had to get back on. And of course, you're always, with being on insulin, you're always chasing your BG number. So, you know, I was kind of chasing the BG number, and I realized that wasn't helping. And so about 6 or 8 months ago, I decided to get some help. So I went to Revero, and at the moment I'm under Dr. Jarouge. Is it Jarouge?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And yeah, he's been very helpful. But after 6 months, the conclusion is, I kind of mistreated my pancreas quite a lot. So it's not really pushing out enough insulin. So I do need to take a baseline of insulin. So that's what I'm doing. And yeah, my A1C it was running in the 6s when on insulin, but then it jumped up to 8.3, but Dr. Drew and of course myself didn't think that was particularly good, so I have started a baseline insulin, and it's immediately come down. Within 2 weeks I get it down to an estimated A1C of like 6.1, so it is working. And I had some digestive issues, so I think that was mainly when I went into hospital for the operation. The antibiotics really destroy your digestive system. So I've been getting over that. And I say I was in the hospital because I had an infection. That was in 2023 in my toe. I didn't lose the toe, but I got my digestive system screwed up a bit. That was interesting going to hospital. Doing the ER triage, I made it clear I wasn't taking statins, because one of the things that when you get into keto and stuff, you start finding out and researching stuff about statins and all the medicines you take and the meds you take. And I found out, a lot of stuff which I changed my mind on. So I decided to stop statins. And so when I was in the ER there, I told them I wasn't taking the statin anymore, because it's on your record. Just a low dose of lisinopril and insulin. I actually, with the infection, I had started taking insulin via my pump, not injecting, because I knew the infection would heal faster if I kept my A1C low. So I had my insulin pump on, and I have a CGM. In fact, the CGM I think is wonderful. I really feel that I only had a lot of success because I had a CGM fitted in 2018, and it enabled me to monitor closely my BG. Anyway, when I was in the ward, they still wanted to give me the statin. I wouldn't take it, and then they said, no, we want to measure your blood glucose with a 2 times a day test strip, and we're going to inject you with insulin. And I said, no, I have a pump and I have a CGM. I can control it infinitely better than you can. And it was a lot of hassle. They wanted me to fill in paperwork, saying that I was going to be responsible for all that stuff, which I did. And anyway, in the hospital, of course, I'm diabetic. That's the reason I have the issue with my toe. But they offer you carbs. Every meal they offer you carbs. And I had to just kind of choose carefully. I just didn't eat carbs. I just chose stuff. They didn't. It was only margarine, no butter, certainly no heavy whipping cream, and no beef. So yeah. Well, it's funny. Without exception, every nurse and staff on my ward floor, were obese, which is kind of not a good thing. Result at the end of the stay in hospital, they give you a conclusion what you should do. They said, "Oh, you don't need insulin anymore." Of course, I was taking and controlling, so my blood glucose was absolutely perfect. I sat in the bed, and just eating very controlled, so it was absolutely perfect. And I was taking my lisinopril one, but even then I would miss it because when you're static like that, your blood pressure goes at lower and completely. So, oh, you don't need lisinopril, you don't need carb, but keep taking the statin. So, so I found that kind of annoying and entertaining. But yeah.
Let me just because you got obviously you've had a long life. You've got a number of health issues. You probably spent a lot of time, starting with psoriasis, putting on creams. Maybe they tell you go get some sunlight, things like that.
Sure.
Didn't really help much. Diabetes, diverticulitis, some of these other issues, amputation of a toe from the diabetes complication. At what point during your journey did they ever talk to you much about nutrition? Was that ever something like for the psoriasis, for the diverticulitis? Was that ever discussed?
In fact, I'm still with that endocrinologist. I do want to stop, but I think it's better the devil you know than the one you don't know. And I being older than my endocrinologist, I do have kind of a little bit of a seniority over him, so he does listen to me a little more. He doesn't fob me off everywhere. So to a certain extent, now I got to put it, I'm still alive. I've been with him 25 years. So anyway, no, he didn't. He would just say, don't eat, go easy on the carbs, but no nutritional advice at all. In fact, he has various, examination rooms, and he leaves the door open, so I can hear him talking to other people, and I've heard him talk to people who've gone there who are kind of clearly frightened that they've been diagnosed with type 2, and he's telling them to eat fruit like mangoes, and I'm thinking, no, I can't eat mangoes. And so he's not giving good advice. And recently I went there, and I was mentioning this before I joined Revero, saying, well, my insulin, I'm taking more insulin than I'm putting on weight. And he was saying, how much insulin? So he looked, and he went to calculate the dose, and then he said to me, well, let me see, you eat like 140 grams of carbs a day. So he's trying to calculate how much insulin I needed per day. And I said, no, I don't eat zero carbs. I don't eat any carbs. And that just absolutely stopped him in his tracks. He could not process that. So anyway, he went on and calculated. Oh, yeah, you're doing 50 milligrams a day. That's not too high. It should be around 40, but it's not too. He wasn't particularly worried. But of course, previously, he'd been prescribing me 240 units up to a day. Yeah. And I remember, 90-day, I'd get a 90-day prescription. I'd have 21 vials of insulin, which must have cost, I guess it must have cost kind of maybe 15,000 a year, that. And Enbrel in itself, which I don't need anymore, I think is like, it's $40,000 a year. Yeah. So, the doctors don't make sense in a way. They don't treat you, they don't offer you alternatives through nutrition, which obviously I found out now and know it's very effective. But yeah, that's one thing. So my doctor's still on that, even though he does say sometimes, you're doing good. You're doing good. So
let me just interject here, because you said, obviously your traditional physicians are not focusing on nutrition. Maybe some sort of just general advice. It doesn't really
correct.
Get into that. That with Revero, you have a different sort of aspect on that. Is that correct?
Yes. they really haven't advised me on diet because I'm pretty much into it. I know what I should eat. I am in the last year. I mean, keto was probably 80% meat at Carnivore, maybe a little more. These days, I'm up in the 95%, and I don't really eat too much plant stuff. If I go out socially, I order a meal with broccoli or a salad, but a steak or maybe ribs or something like that. But yeah, no, they don't. And I think the endocrinologist should. I don't know about a general practitioner should, but yeah, I mean, they just don't, so I find that disturbing, quite honestly, because I don't want to put down my doctor, but, my endocrinologist, but he's not giving out good advice. And I know it's not he's misinformed and not the training. I believe doctors' training has very little training in the line of nutrition. So I think that's one of the reasons as well. Of course, Big Pharma doesn't help by pushing, obviously, clearly a drugs for these diseases which don't cure, they just hide the symptoms. So that doesn't help either. And big pharma does a lot of damage in the medical profession, mainly because of their financial clout and, of course, profit motive. Yeah.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Yeah, I mean, it certainly is lucrative financially to have people on drugs for the rest of their life because you just have this subscription model payment of medication forever. And it doesn't, and you're right, it doesn't cure the disease. It just medicates it. And it's kind of like I use the analogy of playing whack-a-mole with a little game where you hit the thing, just whacking it with symptoms. Here's another drug. Here's another drug. And at some point you realize that just is not the way. And I assume Dr. Giroux at Revero is supportive of your current diet, which is
so I mean, and I told him about statins, etc. And I'm sorry. Let me just. Sorry, I had a call come up. I don't know why that popped up. Okay, and so yes, he's been very helpful, and I told him I don't take statins. He didn't say very much, but he didn't disagree. So I mean, one of the other things I did when I was with my doctor is I do watch a lot of I watch a lot of people who post videos on YouTube, like yourself, and one of my early influencers was a guy called Ivor Cummins. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I do. I know Ivor well. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And initially, obviously, I'm worried about you're worried about heart attacks, etc. And so he mentioned the CA scan, know your calcium score. And so in July 2019, I requested my endo for a CAC scan, and he gave me the order, and it came back with a much. I had expected it to be around 1,000, which is high, but having and suffering from type 2 and all the treatment I was going under for 20 years, I hadn't expected it to be low at all. But it came back at like an oh my god high of 2,296. Now, he got on the phone to me because he got the results before I did, and he told me about it, and that caught me off guard because I didn't see the results. And he was saying, well, I want to put you on a statin. But at that time, I had kind of decided not to take a statin. So I turned and he said, yeah, you got to take statin. And I told him I'd stopped. And he said, you got to take a statin. And I said, no, I don't think I will. And he says, where are you getting your advice from? So I mentioned Ivor Cummins, and I could hear him on the keyboard. He was looking him up. And of course, he has an online name. It's called the Fat Emperor. And his voice was incredible. It's just like, the Fat Emperor? Why are you following this guy? And he was a guy who actually, I decided that a CAC scan was good. So, yeah, he wasn't very appreciative, but I still didn't take a statin. And he did write me a letter with mentioning of, death and stuff. He didn't say I was going to die, but, if you don't take a statin. And I sent him a letter back saying that it's ridiculous. There's no proof to that. But he got the admission that I wasn't taking it. He wanted it in writing, I suppose. I believe one of his of care is to prescribe a statin, so it's not strictly his fault, I guess. You probably know better than me. Yeah. So anyway, I did that. I was kind of shocked. I still decided, and I started getting more interested in calcium scores, and I picked up a lot of stuff more from Ivor because I saw some more of his lectures. And so I did another scan a year afterwards, and it went down to 2,175. So I thought, oh, the diet's working. And Ivor Cummins says if you stabilize or it doesn't go up by more than 15%, you can go from a risk of 50% of a CVD event in 5 years down to 3%. So I thought, oh, so that's pretty good. 3% is nearly normal for my age, I believe. And anyway, COVID came along, and initially I kind of believed everything they were saying about the vaccines, and I did take 2 shots. I was on the list because I was more high risk. So I took those in March 2021, the 2 Pfizer shots, and then later on, I became very unenamored with the vax, and I refused to have any boosters. And I kind of regretted taking the original shot. So I did not suffer anything noticeable at the time. Anyway, I did another scan because of COVID. I left it 2 years. So in 2022, July 2022, I had my third scan, and it had jumped from 2175 to 2559. And that kind of annoyed me a lot. After I calculated everything, that meant my CA score had only changed by 5%, less than 5%. So that wasn't too bad, but having that big jump worried me. And the only thing I could put it down to was having the vax, because I was still very much into keto and following it very, very correctly. Anyway, that kind of annoyed me, but anyway, I waited 2 years, and I did a scan last July, and the score came back at 2312. So it went down nearly what it was when I took my first one. 2296 to 2312 is basically the same. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure carnivore and keto, I mean low carb, definitely is a player in that. So over 6 years, my CAC score is basically the same. It's stabilized. It's like 0%, except for that one jump. And the only thing I can put that down to was the vaccine, because I was following keto diet very, very closely. I don't know if that's anyone. And I did read afterwards that the vaccines do cause endothelial inflammation, so it could have been just a thing. But when I did find out that my score had gone up, I looked up online, and people said there was a detox supplements which were NAC, nattokinase, and bromelain, and turmeric, and so I did take those. So it went down. So it only makes me think that diet is very, very critical to my heart health as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure. And it's you would not be the first person I've seen that has had a CAC score sometimes go down or certainly stay the same on a low carb keto carnivore diet. That's pretty well being seen, more and more commonly. So how do you rate your health today versus what it was, 10 years ago? Oh,
it's much better. My quality of life is a lot better because I'm more mobile. I mean, when you're overweight, I had fallen over a couple of times, tripped over, not because I was unstable or anything, and to get up was extremely difficult for me. And people just could not manage to help me up because I was so heavy. So, I mean, not having to go through that is really good. And all the things like, no extender belt on the aircraft, and, shoes, tying up shoes and all that. So yes, it's a lot better. Obviously, I'm 10 years older. And of course, the age thing does come into it. I have lost a little bit of muscle mass. And so Dr. Rue has told me, go and do some workouts. And unlike you, I'm not inclined that way, but I have tried it and had done it in previous years. COVID didn't help because the gyms weren't open. But I did do it for a while, and I do try to go out cycling. My choice of is to go out cycling. And I do try to cycle at least an hour a day, which I find helps a lot. And sometimes I can extend it to an hour and a half to 2 hours. Recently, it's been very cold in Florida. Not cold for you guys. Well, you're in Texas. It's pretty warm, but it's cold here, and I don't like going out. So I'm using it as an excuse not to cycle. But it rains as well. When it's cold, it's usually rainy. So, but I will start up. I will start up and do it again.
Yeah, well, I'm actually up in Washington State, and it's about 30 degrees out here right now, 35 degrees.
Yeah.
It's a little bit chilly for me, but I'm out there running. I got to actually go out this afternoon and run some sprints outside in the cold, so I'll put a bunch of layers on and do all that stuff. But so, obviously one of the concerns of diabetes is things like you've had toe amputations. As an orthopedic surgeon, I cut off a lot of feet, toes, legs, sometimes fingers and stuff like that. How has that, your skin has been in good shape since you've been on low carb now? Is that protecting
pretty much. I do have actually something like that. When I have a little bit of flare up in my psoriasis, it just appears in a couple more places. It's a warning because I'm not doing stuff right, so I have to change something. So my skin is pretty good. I had a lot of digestive issues in the last year because of the antibiotics. And I think when my BG went up, when I was trying to get off insulin, I did stop for quite a few months. That didn't help. I think that made the inflammation worse. So now I'm back on insulin, and I'm using a pump, and I know how to program my pump pretty well. So I'm getting a pretty good insulin. I'm kind of running around 110, whereas before I was running like 180, no insulin. So 110, it goes down to 80 and goes up to like 140, 150.
That's largely a normal range, though.
Of course, yes.
Normal range for non-diabetics,
Yeah. That is a normal range. I'm inclined those are the peaks and the lows, but I'm inclined to be averaging a little bit high, like 110, 115, which puts my A1C around 6 point something. But I have got controlling my insulin. I have got my A1C down to 5.6. But that's when I start putting on weight because I'm using insulin to keep it down. And that then stimulates my appetite. And that's what I wanted to get out of when I went to Revero. And I feel I needed guidance if I went off completely insulin. And I wanted someone to be monitoring me in parallel to check. And eventually, I guess I came to what I thought might be the issue with Dr. Charouge, but I'm very happy that he was along with me and that I can do it. I didn't really want to do that, and I wouldn't advise people to do that alone. I did a lot of my keto stuff without consulting my doctor because I didn't think I was going to get any positive feedback with him, so I just stopped going to him for 8 months and just walked in my endo. I walked into his office after 8 months, 70 pounds lighter and off all meds. And he, by the way, he didn't notice I'd lost 70 pounds. He just said, "Why you stopped all your meds?" And I said, "Well, I don't need them." So that led to some interesting conversations, and I can't say he was very positive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad.
I was hoping. in my naivety, I was hoping you'd say, "Oh, that's very good. I should recommend that to my other patients, so they do so well." But no, it doesn't work like that. He's not going to be a doctor. I've heard. I think you've probably heard of Dr. David Unwin, who's a UK
Yeah,
doctor
I know David quite well as well. Yeah.
yeah, he's quite an interesting guy, and yeah, I would like to see my endocrinologist do an about turn like David did a few years ago, but it's not going to happen, I don't think.
Well, given enough. Well, I mean, it was just interesting. I just saw that the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill to allow AI to have medical autonomy, to have their own license. And so what you're going to see is a lot of physicians are probably, if this passes, or eventually when it does pass, which I think it eventually will, physicians will be replaced with AI robots that are trained to use the pharmaceutical model, and anybody that questions that will be accused of malpractice. So it's an interesting thing. So there won't be any more David Unwins or things like that.
The interesting thing is, I think with the new government having Elon Musk, who I'm a fan of, who's an AI. Obviously, he's done amazing things. I have a Tesla car, and I do have full self-driving it, and I'm absolutely amazed at what that does. And of course, he's got the robots coming, so he's the king of AI at the moment. And of course, with Robert RFK Jr., with the MAHA, the Make America Healthy Again, I'm expecting good things. But politics and other things, we have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's an interesting time we're in.
It's a very interesting time.
So you'd mentioned, obviously, you've been on a low carb, ketogenic, and somewhat carnivore diet. It's helped you significantly. I don't need to be on the $40,000 a year Enbrel. Your insulin amounts are much lower.
Yeah.
You finally gotten support with the Revero doctors to help guide you with your nutrition and not, and support you in that. And you mentioned you get out and exercise a little bit. What other things are you doing to help with your health? Working on sleep? Are you getting into some sunshine? Things like that?
Yeah, my sleep's been pretty good. I have neuropathy, so I am inclined to get cramps in my calves, my legs a lot, and I take electrolyte drinks, etc., and they help a little bit, but it doesn't completely go away. And the neuropathy is kind of annoying. It's also dangerous, of course, because it's very easy to hurt your foot or get a wound and not notice it, and that can progress very quickly to something serious. And so I'm very aware of that. And then I do go to have my feet seen at least 4 times a year. So I always, if you have neuropathy, you really should look after your feet. I've made mistakes and suffered the consequences from that. One other thing I do find, lipid panel results, my doctor goes, "Oh, your LDL is high, your total cholesterol is high, you need to do a statin." And I've learned that that's not the way to interpret it. So what I found, and I found it through many of the doctors who I watch online, and it comes out, one guy from Australia, Dr. Paul Mason, he mentions it as well, makes it a bit clearer. One of the best measures, and using values from your lipid panel, is your triglyceride level and your HDL level. And if you divide your triglycerides by your HDL, and if you're using milligrams deciliter, which is the US units, keeping it under 2 and preferably under 1 is a very, very positive indicator of good CVD health going forward. Before I started in early 2018, my triglyceride divided by HDL ratio was 4.78. That meant I think my triglycerides was 220 and my HDL was low at 46. And I was on a statin at that time. So apparently everything was good, but in terms of, in reality, it was bad. Within, I think, 6 months, I got my triglyceride HDL ratio down to under 1. And it stayed more or less under 1. I've had it as low as, I think, 0.35 when I was really, really strict. And that is I try to explain it to my doctor in my endo. He just doesn't want to listen. I say, no, my LDL is like 130, which is kind of normal, really. So they think it's high. But I said, this is really good, but it goes over their head. And there is another test you can do, which is called an NMR profile, lipo profile, where they look at your LDL in more details and see the particle size and the particle count. And if I watched a doctor, what was his name? He's actually a pathologist in Australia, Ken, I'm forgetting his name, but he said if your TG to HDL ratio is low, there's no need to do this test. And anyway, eventually, recently here, I did the test. By the way, I paid for most of my tests, these tests, myself. My doctor has no idea what they're all about, I think, but I have done a lot of tests myself. Obviously, Revero do a lot of great tests as well. So recently I haven't had to do them. But I did an NMR lipoprotein test about a year ago, and it came back as low risk, which I expected. But it's nice to have the confirmation.
Yeah, well, good for you. That's good for you. And so obviously, had you known about this 30, 40 years ago, maybe not develop diabetes, maybe you have not developed psoriasis and all those other things. So, but it is what it is at this point. We'd all like to turn back time if we could, but
I'd love to.
We can't. So,
I mean, what makes me happy that coming out now is that I see people asking the questions, and I do explain. I do share my experiences, and I see people saying they think the end of the world's happened, and they're like 45 being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and they can do something about it now, that this time. Whereas I didn't start my journey until I was 70 years old.
Yeah.
So a lot of water under the bridge and a lot of damage done that could have been avoided, of course.
Of course. Do you, as someone who's now like 78, and again, if you had somebody that was 40, type 2 diabetes, psoriasis, what advice would you do? And would you say it's helpful to have a physician that is on board with this stuff? How important is that aspect?
Well, I think the trouble is I do think a physician on board, but there aren't any out there unless you study this, research like I did and found out all this stuff. And even then I try to find doctors that I think are friendly near me, and they're not. They're a long way away. So I do think Revero and having the online opportunity to work with, doctors that are experienced in low carb and know the benefits would help. I did my journey basically by myself, but I'm lucky. I'm lucid, and I'm a retired engineer, so I did do research and go down the rabbit holes, and I found a lot of stuff. So I've discovered so much stuff in the last 6 years. It's been amazing. So most people, I would say, unless they have a very strong, I wouldn't say engineering background, but they can control and do stuff and follow instructions, they could do it themselves, as long as they understood. But it took me 2 or 3 years to really understand what and even every day I learn more. So, yeah, I would say if you can't find it, I wouldn't go to any physician at the moment because, unless it's an online one that's low carb friendly, because I feel that they would actually shoot you down in flames and not let you do it. So I'm kind of in a doubt with that. I think people should be able to consult people who are low carb savvy, but they're just not out there, and it's not everyone can afford to work with an online physician who is low carb friendly. So yeah, I mean, I can't say no to a physician. I did it without one, but very knowledgeable. I'm very very aware of what risks I was taking, and I've not regretted any of the decisions. I think everybody should be encouraged to manage their own health. You shouldn't be, even with a good physician, how can a good physician who you see maybe 10 minutes 2 or 3 times a year, be able to really see what your health is. Only you can do that and know that. And so managing your own health, understanding it, is key. And I've done a lot of research over the last 6 years doing that, and it's only helped me immensely. And I do get obviously put down a lot. I mean, some people will attack you for it. I mean, not physically, but very, very vocal that you're going to kill yourself, and giving that advice to other people will kill them. And it's it's sometimes off-putting. So you have to have a thick skin. I imagine I remember you doing a meeting with the 2 vegans from the UK, and I was amazed how calm you kept with their outbursts on on such stupid things. What I consider stupid things, like any carnivore animal, you need to kill them as well. Oh, it's just unbelievable, that one was. I remember that. I kudos to you for your patience with them. I wouldn't have put up with them, I don't think.
Yeah, it was entertaining. I didn't see it as an intelligent discussion, just a discussion for entertainment purposes.
It was a one-way rant, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, Peter, this has been fascinating to hear your journey, see how you've, in many ways, solved a lot of your own problems, but then eventually found a group of supportive physicians in the Revero group. I appreciate you doing. How's your family respond? Do you have any friends, family that have seen your journey, and have they responded positively, negatively to this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you first get on it, you're like, I don't want to insult anyone, but like a Jehovah's Witness, you're knocking on everybody's door, telling them the good news. And of course, people don't take that very seriously. I think one time I was talking to my son, who's up in New York. He's a lawyer, and he did come to me one time. He said, "Dad, if you mention low carb once again, I'm gonna really get mad at you." But he has gone on low carb. He doesn't keep to it as good as I'd like to, but since then he started running marathons, and he's run 3 or 4 marathons. I think he ran the New York, he ran the Boston, and he ran the Chicago one. So it's working with him. His brother, who's the identical twin, he's an airline pilot, so his health is his job. So he has kind of gone low carb, but he has anti-low carb wife. So I don't know how that's going. Yeah, we've come to kind of a disagreement over that. My youngest son, who I mentioned was in the army, he keeps himself fairly fit. He's a bit chunky now, but he doesn't follow low carb. His wife is is also not low carb, but she's thinking about it now. But my son does exercise quite regularly. He goes out for runs and goes to the gym, but I think he could benefit from low carb. My other son, who's doing the marathons, I'm trying to convince him to really go low carb and run when he's fasting and in ketosis. Not fasting, but when he's in ketosis, because he still chugs the carb drinks. And I said, you don't need to do that. And I tried to get him to watch some of the, what's his name, Timothy Noakes's videos. So about running and having much more stamina, because he does hit the wall occasionally. He doesn't run a fast marathon. It's like 5 hours. So yeah, but he did run one when he was, I think, pretty much been low carb for a few days before, and that was the best one he ran. So still trying to convince him to do that, but yeah, they're doing good.
Well, Peter, thank you very much for doing this. This has been very interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a website that you participate in? Are you on a social media or anything like that?
I don't. No, I don't. See, my wife's just come in. I was just saying that my wife she's kind of following what I'm doing now, but she works out. She's just come back from working out like for 4 hours. So yeah,
goodness,
she's
busy.
Yeah, she's 80 years old.
Wow. Well, good for her. Awesome. You guys are inspiring. Thank you very much, Peter, for doing this. I appreciate it.
No, it's nice talking to you, and keep up the good work. Yeah, I mean, you're doing a lot of good stuff out there. Let's hope. Yeah, you and Dr. Berry. I'm waiting for Dr. Berry to push away with the American Diabetic society, I think it's ADS rather than ADA. That's going to be a great thing as well.